guys, you need a little reminder. We are exactly 1 week away from casting our ballots for the federal election, if you haven't voted early, of course. But how is technology shaping Canada's democratic process?
Well, here to dig into this with us is the CEO of the Samara Centre for Democracy, Sabrina Dellin. Sabrina, welcome back to the show. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And speaking of digging in, let's get right to it. Describe the role that technology is playing in this election in particular.
Technology is playing a huge role in this election. We know that voters are feeling a lot of trepidation right now about information threats online, especially connected to election content. Disinformation, bots, foreign interference, you know, there's lots for us to be conscious of. And we need to remember that this isn't just about misinformed Canadians. Voters are up against information manipulation from people who are actively looking to threaten our democracy, to threaten our sovereignty, and they do this by spreading misinformation across our communities. So it's really important right now that voters feel equipped and supported so that they understand what's accurate, what's misleading, and where they should be careful online.
Okay, let's go a little deeper in there because we've talked a lot on this show about the issues that matter to voters the most right now, but you say that online conversations, they can be misleading in that way. So how so?
Sure, so in our research, we found that a handful of accounts can shape and dominate an entire conversation on a platform. And this happens through power users. So this can be a person that's posting at a very high volume, or it can be a bot that's posting at a rate that isn't even humanly possible. Either way, we have a small number of accounts that are shaping and dominating the conversation, and this can create opportunities for manipulation for bad actors. You might be surprised to learn that emojis play into this, actually. On Facebook, you can react to a post with a thumbs up or a heart. Also, an angry face emoji. When you give that angry reaction, that is boosted at a higher rate than a more positive or neutral reaction. So that's going to drive more negative and divisive content into your feeds, and it can mislead us into thinking we're more divided than we actually are. And it raises some questions about some more nuanced reactions that would be nice to have on these platforms, like, I don't agree with what you're saying, but I understand and respect where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Sabrina, another thing you want voters to be aware of online is something called astroturfing. Can you define that and explain why?
Astroturfing is something that reads and feels like it's coming from a grassroots movement, but it's actually a fake message from someone that has nothing to do with that movement at all. AstroTurf is fake grass. Astroturfing is fake grassroots messaging.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it can also be about inflating likes, views, replies, reshares in a way that drives this content into feeds and gets it in front of as many people as possible. In our work, we've seen this connected to anti-LGBTQ+ discourse, and we're concerned about this online influence because it can skew public opinion and it can even end up shaping policy agendas.
Okay, I think that's where we're going to go next because we want to drive home that there are consequences, like real-life consequences to these online narratives. If we are being misled about what Canadians actually care about, then bring that home to us. Like, how does that impact day-to-day democracy that we would see and feel and understand?
So we have to be so discerning about what we see on these platforms, and that can vary so much from one platform to another. And it can mislead us into thinking we're more polarized and disconnected than we actually are, because we start to think that what we see on these platforms reflects public opinion, and that's not necessarily the case. Politicians need to be paying attention to this as well. They might respond to something they see online thinking that's what their constituents want, but that's not necessarily true. So what we need to remember is that we don't have to only be online. In-person conversations are so valuable. You need to talk to your friends, your family, your neighbor, your candidates that are going to be knocking on your doors this week, your elected officials. And we need to normalize talking about the issues that we care about and the places that we're getting our information. And when we're in person, it is so much more nuanced, there's so much more context, there's so much more than just hitting the angry emoji and scrolling on. And it helps us understand that we're not as divided or polarized as we're being led to believe.
Such great advice. All right, so we've been talking about how technology affects constituents, but how it also has major impacts on politicians. So how do we see that play out in our democracy right now?
So we've been doing a study on X. We count the abusive tweets received by candidates in Canadian elections. So to date, we've analyzed 4 million tweets received by over 1,500 candidates across a dozen elections and confirmed that online abuse is a condition of work for people who step into the political arena. Insults, harassment, sexually explicit content, you can expect that whether you're a first-time candidate or a more experienced one. And so this is going to affect who steps forward to run and stay, because who wants abuse as a guarantee in their job, and who wants to subject their families to that as well? As voters, we think about who do we want representing our communities? Who do we want representing our interests? This normalization of hateful abuse online is affecting who we have to choose from to represent our interests. And it's not just politicians that are contending with this. Other professions that are on the front lines of our democracy, journalists, teachers, public librarians, they deal with this too.
We've seen it. We've seen it. Well, a big part of your research at the Samara Center is that you compared information cycling through different platforms. So X, Facebook, YouTube, and Reddit, just to name a few. Are there any distinctions among these that really stuck out for you?
Yeah, so it's important for us to know right now that meta platforms have blocked the sharing of news in Canada for over a year. So we decided to take a look at Reddit in the first week of the election because it's a place where Canadians can share news. The subreddit r/Canada has over 3.7 million members. It's nearly tied with r/Taylor Swift, so that gives you a sense of how big it is. And it's a really important space to understand how the online election conversation is playing out. So what we found was that a small portion of users were again shaping the conversation. Just 9 users were producing almost 30% of the posts. And it was just 150 commenters that were producing 14% of the comments that we were seeing. So we've got almost 4 million members in this space, but such a small number, 150 or 9 accounts that are shaping what we're seeing.
Wow, that's incredible. All right, so Sabrina, do we have a sense of whether these tech platforms are making Canadians more or less likely to vote?
So one of our concerns is that people see this manipulated and divisive content and it causes them to take a step back and feel like their voice doesn't matter, they're disconnected from where the majority of Canadians are at, and that their vote doesn't matter. And when that civic connection is broken, it's so hard to restore it. But as we're talking about, there are people that are very committed to ensuring Canadians feel that way. And so we need to be aware of it and push back against it. And in this moment, democracy is under threat around the world. We are fearful in Canada about the economic implications of this, what this means for our sovereignty. And so I think that's translating into more political engagement in a way that is really new and novel and important for so many of us. And we're hopeful that that will turn into a high turnout at the polls. But we need to remember, when you're seeing these political conversations online, please be careful. Don't assume it's from an actual person. Don't assume it's reflective of where the Canadian public is at. And know that these platforms are interested in amplifying negative content because they benefit when it's popular.
Something to keep an eye on. Sabrina, thank you so much for stopping by for this very important conversation.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.